I ask you to please bring your voices together in hymn 1066, O Brother Sun. This song is based on a well-known poem by St. Francis of Assisi. Sharon Anway wrote these lyrics for the feast day of St. Francis, and she adapted them to the Scottish tune, Ye Banks and Braes.
Singing Mother Earth, Beloved Garden. It is hymn number 1067 in your teal hymnal. We will be singing the first 4 verses.
Mother cherish what remains of the earth and to foster its renewal is our only legitimate hope for survival. Wendell Berry.
Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Emily. I am your service leader this morning. If you're with us on the internet, if you're with us sitting in the chairs around me, we are one community, united in our commitment to each other and our commitment to live out our principles in the world. And speaking of the world, there are some worldly details to cover. First, if you have cell phones, please silence any digital devices that might ding or bing or Twitter. Please note the perfume-free section for anyone with chemical sensitivities. This is sort of a refuge for those that might need it to respect. And also please respect the personal space around any service animals that might be in our congregation today, and not step over them, just sort of step around any seated service animals. Based on our community trends, health trends, we are currently at a low risk level, so masks are optional during this service and during the use of the building this week. So we will follow the low risk level guidelines published on the website. And no matter what the risk level is, at any time you can wear the color-coded wristbands that are provided at the front of the congregation that indicate kind of your distancing needs or wishes. Of course, it's important to stay home and join us online if you are feeling ill and participate in our community through the internet interconnection. So today in our pulpit, we have Dana York and Bob Ensor here to talk about conservation from a farmer's perspective. Dana has been part of this church since returning to the family farm, the 130-acre family farm in 2013. The farm produces organic vegetables and flowers and is an incubator for young farmers. In fact, there is currently a young veteran, right, that is keeping sheep on the farm, as I understand it. Dana has been very active in this congregation, serving as vice president, president, and past president of the board and hosting many events. Bob moved here a year ago from Maryland, where he has a farm and a real estate company, and he says he likes it pretty well here, says it's comfortable. Dana and Bob are planning to tie the knot in late March, so very soon. Yeah. So, this grand show. Today, we light the chalice in honor of the conservationist in all of us, inside of us, and with the words of John Muir. This grand show is eternal. It is always sunrise somewhere. The dew is never all dried at once. A shower is forever falling. Vapor ever rising. Keep close to nature's heart and break clear away once in a while and climb a mountain or spend a week in the woods. Wash your spirit clean. We are one community. Ours is not a perfect community. We are wonderful and human and messy and a work in progress, working hard to get it right, or if not right, at least kind, mindful of love, that in the words of Rumi, we are pieces of love. If you are here for the first time, seeking a spiritual home or a safe space of inquiry and acceptance, I welcome you. We all welcome you. To the familiar faces I have come to know so well, I welcome you. And in all our beautiful diversity of experience, education, age, stage of life, stage of journey, origin, sexuality, and gender, I welcome you all. I value who you are and what you bring. Among other gifts, Dana has brought a book, a favorite book, and today we are inviting our children, those young at heart, youth, parents, to join us up here for a time for all ages, where Dana will share The Wonder Walkers.
How many of you like to go out walking, out in nature? Hiking, walking? What's the best thing about walking out on hikes?
You get to explore.
Get to explore? What?
Get away from your house.
Get away from your house.
You can find things that aren't as good as you think they are.
That's right. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. Our book today is The Wonder Walkers. This is a brother and sister who are sitting inside and they go, let's go out in nature. There's so many things to see out there. So we're going to go with them on this journey and kind of see how they see the world in a new light by looking at all the things that are in the earth, that are on the earth. So here, the brother and sister, they're kind of sitting there reading on the couch, and they want to go outside. And when they go outside, they call it a wonder walk. And so she says to her brother, "Wonder walk?" And he says, "Sure." So they get outside and they start looking around and they start wondering. And they go, "Look at the sun. Is the sun the world's light bulb?" And they look up at the sun, and then they start walking down by the river. Here they are on the bridge, and there's a fog coming in. Have you seen all the fogs we've had lately? Because it's been really warm at day and cold at night. And they go, "I wonder about that fog. Is the fog the river's blanket?" Because it's following along on the cool river. And then they look up like we do here and see the mountains over on the edge and say, "Do the mountains have bones? Are the forest, the mountains fur?" If you look up our mountains over here on the edge where the trees don't have leaves, I always thought that looked somebody's hair sticking up. Not Bob's, but other people's. And then they go, "I wonder about that." And he says, "Me too, I wonder." And they start looking at more things. And they start looking at the trees that are around them, and they say, "Are the trees the sky's legs?" And then they climb up in the trees and they say, "Are the branches the tree's arms?" Look like it. And then they look down at Bob and R's favorite thing is it's soil, not dirt, till you bring it into your house. Is the soil the world's skin because it covers the earth? Are the roots of the plants the toes of the plants? Then they go down by the ocean and they say, "Do caves have mouths?" Because you walk into a big cave. And then they're down on the shore and they say, "Are the shells the shore's necklace? Is the ocean the world's bath?" And then they look at the river and they say, "Are the rivers the earth's veins?" Because it runs like blood along the earth. And then they hear the wind and they say, "Is the wind the world breathing?" And then it starts to rain and they say, "Is the rain the day's tears?" And now they're heading back home and they look up and they see the moon and they say, "Is the moon the world's nightlight?" And then they're back home and they go, "I wonder." And he says, "Me too." So today we brought you something, and these are bracelets because we're going to talk about conservation. And if you can just do one of the things we talk about today, and this is going to help you remember that says, "I'm a conservationist." And because we're soil geeks, it says soil health. But we also brought you a little book of how to be a friend to a pollinator. So if you want to come up and go out, come around this way and go that way, Bob will give you a bracelet and we'll give you each a book.
Our musical gift today is the song "Gone Green" by Brad Paisley. The song is a tongue-in-cheek story of small-town conservation efforts performed by Kim and Karis.
Wherever she is. All right. This is what happens when a self-proclaimed redneck tries to go green. Well, he traded in his dumb old Ford for a new smart car with an extension cord. Now he's saving gas and got a cleaner note, but he's got no way to haul his boat. Well, it's the little things we take for granted when we sacrifice to save the planet. Darndest thing I've ever seen. That old redneck has done gone green. Well, down the road, old man McGower, you know he runs his house on the solar power. Now his lights are bright and the music plays, but it's sort of dark and quiet on the cloudy days. Well, it's the little things we take for granted when we sacrifice to save the planet. Darndest thing I've ever seen. This old redneck has done gone green. Well, the life we knew is coming to a halt. Sad but true, and it's our fault. So we put our own crimson necks right in the noose when we got strung out on that black dinosaur juice. Well, not long ago, someone told me to quit using paper, stop killing trees. She said soon there won't be no more books. I swear to God, on a stack of Nooks. Well, it's the little things we take for granted when we sacrifice to save the planet. Darndest thing you've ever seen. My redneck world has done gone green. Whole darn place has done gone green.
We share our moments of joys and sorrows with each other through using these candle cards. If you are with us in person, you can use the candle cards, or by, if you are not with us in person, emailing Reverend Tiffany at minister@hvuuc.org with the words candle card in the subject line. Please make sure to indicate whether or not you would like it read out loud. There's a place on the card to tell us whether you want it read out loud, or because it will be broadcast publicly on YouTube. I do want to let you know two things. We have two cards that early Monday morning we received word that Amy Bond has passed away. Several of us got to see her, says Reverend Tiffany, the day before, and she got the card that many of you signed last week. There will be a memorial service here at the church at a future time that has not been set quite yet, but please hold Amy's family, especially her daughter, in your hearts. And from Doug McKee, he is sending a candle of concern and gratitude that in this time of more serious asthma and other diagnoses of his, he says, I do sorely miss being with my church community on Sundays, and I truly appreciate the calls, the cards, and the help I receive from you. Our community will always be larger than what these four walls can contain. And during this time, we feel the truth of that clearly as we think of the many of you who are present with us today at a distance through the help of technology. And so we light our first candle for you who are not here in the building, but who are ever in our hearts and our minds. If you wish to light a candle, Go around and form a line by the window, and Dana will assist you. If you're on this side of the building, please go around through the back door so you don't pass in front of the camera. And if you wish for us to light a candle for you, please raise your hand until I can acknowledge you, and I will light, or tell Dana to light a candle for you. Light a final candle for all that remains unspoken in our hearts and in our minds.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. This is from Elliot Coleman, who is an American farmer, author, agriculture researcher, and educator, and a proponent of organic farming. He wrote in The New Organic, quote, "Working with living creatures, both plants and animals, is what makes agriculture different from any other production enterprise. Even though a product is produced in farming, the process is anything but industrial. It is biological. The major workers, the soil microorganisms, the fungi, the mineral particles, the sun, the air, the water, are all part of the system. It is not just the employment of any one of these, but the coordination of the whole that achieves success."
Today, Bob and I are here to have a conversation about conservation and how our careers with the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, led us to work in the field and at the policy levels in Washington, D.C., to help implement conservation systems with our nation's farmers to help conserve natural resources. Conservation practices, when used on our agricultural lands, allow them to move from self-sustaining to regenerative. This will be a history lesson, sorry, because those who ignore history are destined to repeat it. An overview of modern regenerative agriculture practices, and then we have some thoughts for you of what you can do, because we can all do better.
Dana and I both spent our careers with a total of 34 and 35 years respectively, although it seems like a whole lifetime, with the NRCS. The agency's beginnings were born of the Dust Bowl. This is the history part of it. The Dust Bowl through the 1930s was literally a perfect storm of policy-driven efforts to get people to move to the West through the Homestead Act, which led to plowing up fragile grasslands to provide food for the nation. What the government didn't count on, surprise, was massive droughts, fragile lands that were prairie grasses to start with, not enough rain to sustain crops, and farmers who had farmed on the East Coast, which was totally different in soils and climate. Crops began to fail with the onset of drought in 1931, exposing the bare, overplowed farmland. Without deep-rooted prairie grasses to hold the soil in place, it began to blow away. Eroding soil led to massive dust storms and economic devastation, particularly in the southern plain states of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, much like today for those of you who follow the news.
The founder of NRCS was Hugh Hammond Bennett, a soil scientist and farmer in North Carolina, who from his experience during the Depression era of the 1920s had observed the massive erosion and destruction of productive farmland in the South, mainly from water erosion, forming huge gullies, washing precious topsoil into the streams, rendering the farmland useless. He was born near Waynesboro, North Carolina, and he graduated from the University of North Carolina and began his career as a soil surveyor for USDA. As he conducted soil surveys and investigated declining crop yields, he became convinced that soil erosion was a problem, not just for the farmers, but also for rural economies. Among his writings in the 1920s, none was more influential than Soil Erosion, a National Menace, a USDA bulletin which he co-authored in 1928. As noted by his contemporaries, Bennett was combined science with showmanship to convince the country that soil erosion was a serious problem that merited national attention. Bennett's speeches inspired action for soil conservation around the country, whether he was doing a farm field demonstration or a scholarly gathering or in Congress.
When a dust storm from the Great Plains moved over Washington, D.C. in March of 1935, during the height of the Dust Bowl, but a few weeks before the famed Black Sunday, Bennett was testifying before a congressional committee on a bill that would create the Soil Conservation Service. He knew that a storm was coming, so he filibustered hours and hours, stating facts and figures about the need for soil conservation so he could delay a vote and action until the room started getting dark. The senators rushed to the window and asked if this was a dust storm. Bennett said, "This, gentlemen, is what I've been talking about." And there goes Kansas. Congress passed the Soil Conservation Act before the end of the year. Ironically, 1 month later, on April 14, 1935, Black Sunday would occur when a mountain of blackness swept across the high plains and instantly turned a warm, sunny afternoon into a horrible blackness that was darker than the darkest night.
The first legislation to help farmers with conservation was called the Farm Bill, and they actually paid farmers to leave the West as they had paid them to go out. But the original farm bills were enacted in 3 stages in the 1930s as part of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal legislation. Its 3 original goals: to keep food prices fair for farmers and consumers, to ensure an adequate food supply, and to protect and sustain the country's vital natural resources, responded to the economic and environmental crisis of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. The CCC also came out of this. While the Farm Bill has changed in the last 88 years, its primary goals have always been the same. The latest Farm Bill that you see here was enacted in 2018 and expires in 2023. It costs taxpayers $428 billion, but of that, $328 billion, or 76%, is tied to the nutrition programs. So that's the green part up there. The actual conservation title is only 7%, or $29.6 billion, that goes to the farming community and their partners to help support conservation on the ground. And that's really not much when you consider that.
So why the history lesson? Humans have been practicing agriculture for more than 10,000 years. Many of the farming practices used in varying forms of agriculture have had a significant impact on the sustainability of our food systems, our food security, animal well-being, environmental health, and human health. By taking the necessary steps in transitioning to more regenerative farming practices, methods, agriculture could go from being considered one of the leading causes of health and environmental issues to a solution for these problems. During our careers and over the past 45 years, we have seen the conservation effort move from what is called farming green, or tagged ugly farming, in the 1970s to regenerative agriculture. Farming green was the first time farmers attempted to plant into existing vegetation instead of plowing the fields. It took years of research to develop the seeds, the equipment, and the techniques excuse me, to make this happen. Skip to the regenerative agriculture, which we're now dealing with, which encourages nature to flourish. It is a restorative form of farming that promotes biodiversity with a focus on healthy, living soil. Practicing regenerative agriculture means stewarding the land and striving to create a balanced ecosystem in which the cycle of nature, including energy, water, mineral, and animal dynamics, work symbiotically and freely.
Regenerative agriculture is soil health. Did you know soil has health? We don't take its temperature, but actually we do. Cool soil helps the soils grow better. And while lowering cost by having good soil health, the term was coined, regenerative agriculture was coined by Robert Rodale of Rodale Institute, well known for promoting organic gardening and farming in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. Now listen, look closely to this. What does regenerative farming actually do? It reduces dependence on costly, potentially harmful chemicals. It improves water and air quality. It enhances ecosystem biodiversity. It dramatically improves soil health. It produces nutrient-dense foods. It stores carbon to help mitigate effects of climate change. And it is more cost-effective than actually the traditional farming methods. Many of our early ancestors really understood regenerative agriculture, even though they didn't call it that. Indigenous people lore talks about the three sisters, Corn, beans, and squash were handed down from the Great Spirit. Corn, the eldest sister, provided a pole for the beans. Squash, the middle sister, grows across the dirt mounds, finds uses of her leaves to protect the sisters from weeds that would grow up and keep the soil cool and moist and full of nutrients. Beans, the youngest sister, weaves her way through the squash, climbing sister corn's stalk toward the sun while putting nutrients into the air and into the soil. Indigenous people understood many of the principles of regenerative agriculture.
Modern agriculture is embracing many of the principles of regenerative agriculture using modern practices. We're going to discuss many of them. Some are applicable to large farms across the nation. Many are applicable to smaller East Tennessee farms, and some can be used in your home garden. If we can all adapt and adopt, then we can collectively have a real impact and hope for the future. Here are a few practices that farmers are using to successfully be part of regenerative agriculture. Legume cover crops. These take nitrogen, a key plant nutrient, out of the air and provide it to whatever is growing in the soil. This reduces or eliminates the need for commercial nitrogen fertilizer. On the home front, clover in the yard is good. Clover is a legume. Why do people try and eliminate it? I don't know. Leave it for the rabbits and the bees. Plant clover in your garden throughout the season. Crop rotations. Farmers now rotate corn with soybeans, one year, the next year. Soybeans is a legume. And they use cover crops to add more nutrients and improve the organic matter of the content of the soil. Organic matter in the soil is an imperative number. It vastly improves the soil by improving the water holding capacity, providing more microbes, more nutrient exchange capacity, better soil health, less opportunity for topsoil washing or blowing away. Precision farming, you may have heard that term. Think walking through a field with a hoe eliminating weeds. How tedious and time-consuming is that? But it's very precise and accurate. Modern-day robotics and computer plant identification are being tested so that herbicides can be reduced or eliminated. Economic analyses are being conducted with insect scouting to determine if it is really necessary and cost-effective to pay for pesticides. Economic thresholds are determined before expensive herbicides or pesticides are used.
To get even more into being precise, precision fertilizer placement. That is spoon feeding plants several times through its life cycle rather than dumping it all on at the very first of the crop. Less fertilizers are lost, run off into our streams or underground aquifer. This goes hand in hand with precision irrigation, where soil moisture is measured and only a minimal amount of water needed is applied through efficient irrigation equipment. Livestock rotations are another way we can preserve our pastures and have enough green for them to eat. The objective is to rotate your livestock almost every day, at the most once a week. No more, no less. This allows the grass to rest in the paddocks and to grow and gain nutrients and improve soil until it can be grazed again. You can also almost eliminate and reduce herbicides. You know, if it's not economically feasible, farmers just don't go out spray anymore because it costs too much. So they count the bugs, they count the weeds. If it's not too bad, leave it alone or let them have some of the crop. It's better than using more pesticides and herbicides. You can also, farmers are also using compost. This is another organic matter improvement that helps with the carbon exchange. If you really get excited about chemical processes and things like carbon to nitrogen ratio, which really thrills us, Composting is the way to go. You can compost your own kitchen waste and put in the final product in your garden. Did you know today livestock farmers are composting chickens, even whole cows, and then putting it back on their fields? There's even a movement to compost deceased humans rather than cremation. We're very lucky in our region to have Hoffman's Compost, if you haven't found them, that takes institutional and local house waste and turns it into compost with tree and leaf litter that they pick up in Johnson City. And finally, plant trees, which is my favorite. You know, why mow grass? Plant a tree, a bush, a fruit tree, an elderberry bush, flowers, or whatever food, fruit, and pollinators use. On my farm, in the last 5 years, I've planted 1,450 trees, mostly oaks, to replace the 200-year oaks that were here when our farm was settled in 1778 by Shadrach Hale. The reason we did this was 2 reasons: to replace the oaks because our farm's name is Grand Oak Farm, but also because Bob and I have studied carbon trading over the last 20 years. And so you might say, well, how many trees would I have to plant? You don't have to be crazy like Dana. But according to Penn State University, to offset just the food you eat, so that's from the time it was grown to produced to it comes on your table, you need about 15 trees to offset the CO2 from consuming a 2,000 calorie diet. Now what about driving around in those cars and all the fossil fuels that we're using? To offset your fossil fuel consumption, about 730 trees are needed to average the CO2 released from each person's fossil fuel usage over the 40 years of a tree's life. So Bob and I, Bob helped this year, but I have primarily planted trees to offset my daughter and son-in-law carbon that they will give off over the next 40 years in the life of those trees. The existing forest that we have, which is about 8 to 10 acres, offsets the carbon that Bob and I have expelled over our lifetimes. We're talking carbon, dear. Yes, okay. We're also doing other things on the farm, is that we're adding a second pollinator strip this year. There'll be almost an acre of flowers and another half an acre that will be just for monarch butterflies.
So, in the end, we believe there's something you can do on your apartment balcony or your backyard, or if you happen to have a farm, on your farm. Instead of reduce, reuse, recycle, we believe you could really look at repairing, repurposing, and reimagining. Now, we're going to give you a list of 20 things that you could possibly do easily. And we're asking you to try and adopt 1 or 2 and change your lifestyle just a little bit. I know many of you are doing some of these already, but let's run through the list. First of all, conserve water. Lots of options there, you know. Take shorter showers if you can get away with it. Yeah, the list goes on. Yeah, plant trees. The second thing, which Dana talked about. Third is use less paper. And of course, paper comes from trees, but we need to plant more trees to make more paper, which is kind of a big circle, which makes you scratch your head a little bit. So, print less, cancel magazine or newspaper subscriptions if you don't use them. Change your mail settings that you can receive emails instead of paper mail. Reuse wrapping paper or bypass wrapping paper altogether. And when you use paper, make sure you opt for something recycled. Number 4, eat less meat. Of course, cutting meat out entirely is not realistic or even healthy for some people. In which case, consider doing meatless Mondays. Try that out. Number 5, waste less food. Think of all the plants and animals and land and water it takes to make meals for everyone in the United States. It's a lot. And according to Feeding America, 40% of the food in the U.S. is wasted. So plan out your meals so you're not tempted to buy food you don't need. Always bring home leftovers from restaurants in reusable containers, of course, if you go out to eat. And lastly, consider growing your own vegetables in an herb garden. Anything you don't eat, the squirrels will. Number 6, use eco-friendly products. Look for items made from recyclable, compostable, biodegradable materials such as glass, bamboo, hemp, recycled cardboard or paper, or organic cotton. Anything else will likely end up polluting our soil, water, and air in the long run. Use reusable goods. That's number 7. Make secondhand and thrift stores your favorite and first stop. My grandkids got together over this past summer, and they're from all up and down the East Coast, and they decided they wanted to buy Christmas presents for each other for the coming Christmas. And it didn't take too much discussion among them to say they're going thrifting. So they went out to thrift stores and figured out what they were going to get each other. And that was their vacation, and I applauded them for doing that. Number 8, avoid the use of plastic. Plastic pollutes bodies of water and human bodies and kills over 1 million marine animals every year. Even in the news nowadays, we're seeing where microplastics are ending up in places where we really don't want them, including our own bodies. Number 9, waste less. Want less pollution in the world? Cultivate a zero waste lifestyle. Start by eliminating single-use plastic water bottles and baggies. Then see how fast you can shrink your trash footprint week by week. Number 10, recycling, obviously, allows plastic, paper, glass, and aluminum to be remade into a whole host of new items, from running shoes to water bottles. Always purchase items made from recycled materials if you can.
Number 11, wake up. Reuse. Reusing goods is even more eco-friendly than recycling them because recycling takes energy, property manufacturing facilities, and manpower. So reusing items is free when you embrace hand-me-down clothes, furniture, and toys. We've already talked about composting. Compost your food, rake leaves, lint dryer, all other organic materials reduces methane and thus improves water quality. If your neighborhood doesn't collect compost bins, you can create your own in your apartment, in your yard. Use the compost to fertilize your garden. It won't pollute the nearby water bodies like store-bought fertilizer will. Use energy-efficient appliances. Toilets, washers, dryers, cars, all of them have these eco settings. The job gets done just as well, but uses less energy, which saves money on your monthly utility bills. And yes, use those LED lights too. If every home in the U.S. swapped out one light bulb, traditional, for an LED light bulb, that would be the equivalent of removing 670,000 cars from the highway. Wow. Use renewable energy. Using renewable energy like wind or solar power will conserve natural resources that are non-renewable. Non-renewable energy is those that once it's used up, it's gone. That's our oil, our coal, that dinosaur juice we talked about a minute ago. Plus wind and solar energy doesn't emit greenhouse gases, so it's a win-win. Number 15 is conserve energy. Electricity unfortunately involves burning fossil fuels to harness energy. Of course, we all know to turn on the lights and turn them off when leaving a room. Also make sure to fully use natural sunlight. Open those blinds up and let the sun in. Try dedicating 1 month a day to using candlelight instead of ceiling lights. 16 is shop local. Don't go long places to shop. Get in the habit of going to your farmer's market, arts fairs for your gifts, home goods, groceries, and flowers and more. This cuts down on the amount of material and energy it takes to pack, to ship, to transport those goods distances, or sign up for a local farmer's share. On the average, agriculture production doesn't produce most of the energy used today. It's everything that happens after the farmer sells that. Number 17 is buy sustainable clothing. There are companies like Patagonia, Pact, and Tin Tree that are committed to being sustainable. And even H&M realizes that consumers want to feel good about what they buy, and they're committed to a circular supply chain. Reusing clothes by wearing hand-me-downs and shopping for secondhand, as we said, is another way to do that. And 18 is try to drive less. It's hard, I know. We've gotten used to driving to the grocery store for one item. Cars emit 1.17 pounds of carbon dioxide per passenger per mile. Walking and biking don't emit anything. If we had better public transportation, like trains and buses that emit less carbon dioxide per passenger per mile, when you get ready to buy a car, looking at a hybrid or an electric vehicle. Number 19 is try to reduce air travel if you can. Most of the industry is trying to do carbon offsets, which Bob and I have been studying, and they think that accurately makes up for this carbon dioxide released by the planes. It's really best to try not to do that as very often, and try again that bike, the bus, the metro, a carpool in an electric car. And lastly, number 20 is raise awareness. Talk about it everywhere you go, your workplace, your school, with your friends and your family. Wear this bracelet. Say, I'm a conservationist. Have somebody say, what does that mean? It's vital in all walks of life, and all generations agree about natural resource conservation. That way we can steadily make progress and avoid the one step forward and two step back situation. So again, we believe, instead of what the 3 R's normally are, is repair what you have. They've actually passed a law. Farmers were not allowed to repair their own tractors. They just passed a law that farmers can now repair their tractors, go buy their parts. So, and then repurpose. Bob and I have a ton of stuff on our farms that we think we're going to use sometime in the future. Our children are wishing we would repurpose it somewhere else. And finally, reimagine. I mean, just yesterday we got the stakes for the trees and we got all these peanuts, and I looked and I was so excited because they were made out of starch. And you just basically put those out and the rain just decomposes them. So don't use those plastic ones. It's centuries for those things to go away. So reimagine your piece of the world, your home and your yard. What small change can you do to improve things within your sphere? For example, leave all the dandelions. That is our bees' first food of the spring. So I know the kids want to pull them up, but if you're going to do that, eat them. So you are repurposing them. Small things make a difference. What can you do to reduce your waste, improve your garden, encourage pollinators, plant trees, edible berries? It will drive your neighbors crazy if you let your lawn go. It's worth it.
If you're looking for a good book to read, try the Sand County Almanac, which is written by Aldo Leopold, the Sand County Almanac. Sand. S-A-N-D, County Almanac. And in this book, he said, conservation is a state of harmony between men and land. And he also said, we abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. That's in the foreword.
We've placed 2 posters over here for you to look at if you have time. The top one talks about all of the ecosystem services that bees do. It's more than just pollination. And the bottom one shows you if you had to reform an inch of a soil, what would be happening in history during those 200 years. So take a time to do that. We'll also set the basket up here so you can get your I'm a conservationist, and also something of how to increase the pollinators in your yard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dana and Bob are stewards of their land and encourage us to take action towards being stewards of the earth. We can draw a parallel to stewarding this church. Today, we mark the beginning of the 2023 stewardship campaign. It's that time of year when we as church members and friends pledge how much we intend to contribute to the church for our next fiscal year, which is June 2023 to May 2024. This process is important to our church as pledges account for almost 80% of our annual income. Today, I'd like to reflect on the value of our Unitarian Universalist experience, share some budgetary objectives that inform our pledge goals, and overview the process you can expect. When I think of what I value in my church experience, it centers around building community and participating in group efforts. That includes events like church work day, committee work, auction events, macho, coffee hour, and enjoying religious services. Many of us find value in services such as religious education and childcare. I'm also glad that the Music Committee, Social Justice Committee, and the Caring Team enrich our community both within and beyond the church walls. We all have our own favorite activities, and they all require facilities, staff, and resources. We are proud to be a beacon of liberal religion in our area, both for our current members and friends, and for those who haven't found us yet. I'm proud that we stand for something in the community, and am encouraged when I see us represented at public events. If we want to continue to do these things, we need your support. The church budget reflects the current needs and priorities of the congregation. Currently, the largest changes in budgetary needs are prioritized around three pillars: providing a living wage for our employees, maintaining facilities, and meeting our UUA obligations. To meet these needs, our campaign target is a 5% increase over the current year's pledge income. When considering what amount you will pledge, please keep in mind there is a wide range over which this occurs. There's great diversity in pledge levels, and all pledges are valued. Your participation is far more important than the actual amount pledged, because we can only reach our goals together. Based on current year expense rate, it costs about $1,400 per member to operate the church. A significant fraction of our income is through numerous modest pledges. Last year, a quarter of pledges were less than $500, and half were less than $100 per month. Of course, volunteer hours are very valuable to our congregation as well, and a pledge of any amount can be accompanied by a pledge of volunteer hours. UUA also offers more information in a contribution guide available online. These statistics and the link to the guide will be provided in the pledge letter that is being sent to you. In the upcoming week, you should receive a pledge card in the mail with a letter providing additional resources for choosing a pledge amount. Please submit your pledges either by mailing back the pledge card, responding via email or phone, or adding it to the collection plate. You can also opt in to receiving your pledge card via email instead. An email will be sent shortly to provide that option. Promotions and reminders will abound in the month ahead. It's just a few Sundays to collect all your pledges, so please be prepared to respond. Our stewardship campaign will run through March, and the total pledges collected will be used to estimate next year's income. Since we are committed to a balanced budget, the results of the pledge campaign directly impact the resources allocated to the services. The budget that the Board of Trustees proposes will be voted on at our annual congregation meeting on April 30th. If you have any questions, please email me at stewardship@hvuuc.org or grab me as you see me about. Thank you.
Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. Albert Einstein. We extinguish the chalice today, but not the light in our hearts. We thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Dana and Bob, for your conservation, your conversation, and for including some real suggestions for how we can have an impact. And a reminder. A couple of announcements. Today we are having a piñata event for K through 5th grade RE. I am understanding that it is supposed to be out in the covered pavilion out back, yes?
We also, two girls are going to share a little information about the history of the piñata. That's okay.
History of the piñata during the event?
No, can they do it right here? The piñata, when we're done,
Maybe when we're all finished and maybe the benediction.
in June, we're going to tell you a little bit of history of the piñata, which is interesting. I was surprised that the RE started this piñata, I think, 2 years ago.
I'm super new at this, so I'm going to just kind of go with my script and then I can turn it over. How's that? Okay. All right. So announcements, there'll be a piñata event immediately after the service out on the covered pavilion. We do have Girl Scout seniors Alexis, Moth, and Olivia that are going to be working on their Gold Award project, which is collecting period products for a local high school. They aim to improve access to period products for high schoolers and to eliminate period poverty. So they will have a well-marked bin set up here, I think it's starting the 5th of March, specifically collecting period products that will be going towards this effort. That collection will be going on from March 5th through March 19th. So thank you for supporting Troop 543 and their efforts to support teens in need of period products. One other last announcement, there will be a new sign-up sheet for coffee hour on the bulletin board next to the food table, and that is an easy job, allegedly, and is a great way to get to know people. And for more opportunities about our church community, there are opportunities for fellowship, for justice work, for working together. You can visit our website, hvууc.org, and check out the news and events section. There's always something going on with this community. So, go forth in simplicity, find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. We have a final hymn, and then there will be allegedly some history of the piñata. But first, our final hymn. Thank you.
Our closing hymn for the month of February is the hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home, from the Teal Hymnal. This is also when we will pass the offering plate. The contributions that you make during the offering supports our community within these walls, but also helps us serve the community outside of these walls. If you're making a pledge payment, please mark it as such. If you're making a payment towards your auction winnings, also mark that separately as such, and thank you so much for your generosity. Please rise with us in body and or spirit for our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in the Teal Hymnal.